Well, good morning. We'll call our December meeting of Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority to order. We've kind of got a little busy agenda today, and they've put a lot of things on items from the chairman, so I guess I'll get to those right now. We've got two presentations I'd like to make, and I'll briefly describe from here, and then I'll go down and meet everybody. But the Oklahoma Transit Driving Championship, we have a driver, Robbie Summers, who is being honored as the runner-up in the driving contest. And the drivers are tested on wheelchair, bus inspection, a written exam, and driving tests in which the drivers have 7 minutes to compete. So it's quite an honor for him to be runner-up. And then, and I'll talk about this a little more when I get down, our commemorative bus passes to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Thunder in Oklahoma City. And Aaron Lewis, who is the Thunder's brand manager, is here, and we'll make that presentation, but I'll come down front. Robbie, if you'd come up. I think he won the Kentucky Derby, it looks like you. Well, congratulations. Yeah, so anyway, your runner-up trophy and recognition of the driving school. How tough is the road course? I'm not worried about the exams and all that, but is it pretty challenging?
Yeah, it can get pretty challenging.
Turns or backing,
Turns,
parking?
backing, what they call serpentine.
What does that mean?
Means like weaving back and forth, pull up to a stop.
Are you eliminated if you hit a cone?
No, he just points to the duck.
Oh, deducted, all right. Well, congratulations. That's a real honor, and we're glad you're working for Embark and driving for us. So you want to drive a streetcar now? They don't have to make so many turns.
I think I'll stay where I'm at.
Oh, you're going to stay where you're at. All right. Aaron? Okay, I didn't know where you were. Well, come up. We want to. I don't know if you've seen these or not. Have you know, but anyway, that's to commemorate 10 years of the Thunder in Oklahoma City, and I think all of us are tremendously proud. Clay Bennett's father and mother traveled with my wife and I, and we were in Carmel when they got the announcement that they got to Seattle, and Clay's son called us. That's the only way we knew that we'd had it. So we go back to when they originally got the franchise. But I know with transportation and particularly parking, and I think what I'm really looking forward to is the modern streetcar that's going to service the arena. Will really make a game day experience a real fun privilege for everybody. So we really appreciate your companionship and working with the Embark, and hope we keep going forward together. All right. Okay, let's turn it. Okay, now I've lost weight. You don't need to do the wide view of me now. So, all right, congratulations. got one of the commemorative, and I think those are really nice, a nice memento for us to remember the Thunder by. So, all right, do we have, oh no, excuse me, we have two more items from the chairman I forgot about. I'm busy, he said. A presentation by Beck Design related to the design work they're performing for improvements to the Santa Fe tenant space. If you all would like to tell us what it's going to look like and how you're doing with UCO working with them.
Well, we have brought our joint architect working on the project. This is Don Beck of Beck Design and his team that was here with us last time, Scott Parker and Brian Weeks. And we have done a lot of work. I believe we're at 65% completed with the drawings, so we're right on schedule, in fact, maybe a little bit ahead of schedule. And we're just going to walk you through where we are and welcome any questions as we go along.
And this is Karen Youngblood with University of Central Oklahoma, in case you didn't know her, but everybody knows her.
They're all used to me, and I'll try and keep my passion under control this time, but I doubt it.
She's made presentations to us before, so.
They were warned they didn't need coffee this morning. So we're bringing on the most exciting piece of parking in Oklahoma City, and go ahead and I'll start right in. The first scope, it's in two parts of scope, as you might recall. The first scope is the city's upgrades to existing functions, upgrading the stairway towers and upgrading some of the mechanicals and different things like that, just making sure that it's all bright, and especially when you consider this is the #1 parking garage used for the Thunder games, and it's the highest full-time capacity of your parking monthly parkers. So lots of traffic in it and just making sure and keeping it all up to date. These are the stairwells that they're working on, updating the colors, making sure they're consistent, making sure everything's just freshened and brightened and safe and all those good things. There's an elevator part that they're working on. It's a repair corridor, making sure that that's brought up. They've just done a lot of elevator work in the last couple of years, so just tying it in together, updating that work as well. So that's the city Part A part. This is the Part B part on the lease that we've been working on, and we are so excited. The main part, this is where we have about 5,000 existing square feet, and overall we'll go to about 18,000 square feet, so we'll definitely get to pay you more rent, which we're thrilled about. And as you can see now, we have it laid out where there's 5 large conference rooms. Our plan is actually to work with the city in general and be able to rent those out during the day or volunteer to host community meetings or make the space interactive for just our citizens and community at large when we're not hosting our classes for UCO. And then in the evening, our MBA is completely full at the Carnegie Center across from Kitchen 324 in the old Carnegie building. And so we have several master's plans that are actually waiting for space so that they can come down. So we'll actually increase the number of people that are eligible to take classes, both daytime and nighttime. The top row of offices are our incubators. UCO Customized Education is certified by the Department of Commerce to have incubators in there, and they are they grow so that we hire more people and pay more sales tax. That's the entire goal, is to grow the city and the state. So we want to keep our incubators full and growing. So that's the majority of what the lease space is for. The next picture, this is where the KUCO radio station will go. You'll actually, in the control, there's a window that faces out to the open area. So people, as they're on the air, or when they're interviewing the mayor or our Cotpa board, maybe they want to come over and do an interview, they'll be able to see the interaction and be able to see the lively, bringing up a lot more interaction with the street level and with just the people that are walking around the area in general. So that's exciting. This is the area that's over by the Skirvin, and it was the last minute that we were able to get this. This is where we're going to have the STEM incubators. So we have incubators over in the other area. This area is going to be the STEM incubator, and those are companies that are focusing on STEM-related programs and processes. Our Research 01 grant will actually come down there and work as well. So we're tying in with the Innovation District. We're bringing STEM-related companies into the core of downtown, working to just advance that work in general. And then we'll also teach classes in the laboratory. This is an exterior rendering. So the courtyard one is if you were standing inside the courtyard looking out toward Main Street. So our new entrances come out and they create some energy and some vitality and some color, and it won't just be a lot of garage color. It'll have some blue and some lovely bronze and blues going on. The street view is if you were standing on Main Street looking up, and you'll see we don't have the mural completed, but we do have here's our placeholder. We're absolutely going to work with public art. We want to increase the vitality, increase the color, and we'll be going back through all of the city's processes to do that. But our plan is to put some sort of mural the entire length of E.K. Gaylord. And so it'll be the wonderful Centennial mural over on the railroad, and then we'll have a fun, energetic, lively mural, whatever passes through all of the different people that be, but we're excited to get into that process as well. This is inside the main space. So this is if you just stepped inside of our space and you look down the hall, you can see it's going to be very open. It's going to be one of those kinds of places that if you're coming down through the garage, you can see people working, you can see people in class, you can see energy, you can see the spirit will definitely increase in that area. It won't be so tired and empty. It will be exciting. And then inside of a classroom, that's the classroom actually looking out and toward the courtyard. Yay, we're in budget. So that's pretty much that one. And yay, we're on schedule. Our goal is that we open classes January of 2019. And that's very aggressive, but we think we can make it, and that's kind of what we're working on together, both Cotpa and us together and with our architects. So it's been a great process. I highly commend you and thank you, because it's been wonderful. Questions, thoughts?
Are you in the space? Aren't you in some of the space now?
I am. I'm in 5,000 square feet currently. I have 4 incubator tenants plus my team at Customized Education. So we're sitting in the space right now. When we get to June, we will actually move over to the ACM at UCO building. We'll still park it at our garage, and then we'll just walk over there for those 6 months. And that way they can completely demo, do all the demo at one time. We won't have to do any phases. We're going to get out of the way and let it go. We'll have to work on some grand, we don't have ribbon cutting or dirt turning to start it, but I think we should maybe have a demolition party or something like that. 'Cause, yeah, the space is begging for it. So.
All right.
Relatedly,
Pardon?
Relatedly, your joke there, I'm thinking about for when this is done in January 2019, we're going to have some big thing.
We're going to have a huge celebration. Huge.
That's all.
Okay. You guys will be the first ones to know. I loved the Santa Fe station cutting the other day. That was amazing. But this is a space like that one that is going to really revitalize the entire area, and we'll do everything in our power to bring it off with a big bang. Yeah. Great. Thanks for your partnership. I appreciate your questions or thoughts anytime.
Okay. All right. Next item we have is from 49's Technology, Laura Wolfgram, and she made the presentation to the Joint Finance and Transportation Committee meeting yesterday. And I might mention at this time the trustees have the minutes from that meeting, which got prepared quickly, and you might, just kind of glance at them as she's making her presentation, and then we'll vote on those at the end of the meeting. So, Laura, all right?
Great. Thank you for having me. Thank you for many of your patience in hearing some of the similar materials. So as far as the Embark Fair study, we started last January with the primary objective of reviewing Embark's fair policies, understanding how they compare to peers, and identifying opportunities to improve Embark's fair structure and fair policies and fair collection technologies. So as part of the study, we looked at peer agencies. We looked at the 11 peer agencies that Embark uses, as well as a greater list of peers to kind of really understand some of the components that some of your peers may have not dealt with yet, such as implementing streetcar or new fare technologies. As part of the study, we developed recommendations based on this review. We also helped develop a fair change policy, a fair schedule, and a fair collection strategy, and these are all to help provide guidance to the board as well as staff as they embark on fair changes and new fair collection technologies in the future. This is a list of the recommendations that have been developed. We'll be focusing on the ones on the left. What is important to remember is that when pursuing a new fare or fare change, it's important to consider kind of the impacts on your riders and their ability to pay. It's also important to kind of think about your other priorities, such as maybe ridership growth or fare box recovery. An enacted fare policy will help in kind of understanding some of these components and navigating these issues. One of the things that will be important to note is that the recommendations are here for receipt by the board, and that staff will be coming back and asking which recommendations they want to go out for public meetings in the February timeframe. And as part of that, there will also be a Title VI analysis to understand any impacts on low-income and minority populations. And then there are some recommendations that are not shown here because staff have already started implementing one, which is your next agenda item, which is related to the Zone 3 paratransit zone. That's kind of an addition or a separation between Zone 1 or Zone 2 into two separate zones. And the other is the mobile ticketing procurement that you guys issued last month. One of the primary objectives of the fare study was to develop a fare change policy to provide guidance to Embark staff when considering, evaluating, and implementing fare changes. The Board of Trustees will retain the ability to approve any of the fare changes. It's just kind of a document to help provide guidance on the steps that are involved. And the staff will be going out to the public with providing the policy online for public comment, and we'll also be receiving public comment cards. The plan is to bring this fare change policy back to the board for adoption at the February board meeting. One of the key components of the fare change policy is the fare box recovery ratio, which is defined as fare revenue divided by the total operating costs. These fare box recovery are targets that are set over a 5-year period. They're kind of designed to help increase the proportion of operating costs that are covered by fares over the next 5 years. And the proposed fare box recovery targets that are shown here are a 10% increase over where you were in 2017. The next recommendation is related to the streetcar. With the introduction of streetcar, it's recommended to plan for launch and to implement and establish a fare in advance. In general, most peers charge a fare. It's very rare to not have a fare established. And part of why you charge a fare is to really create a sense of ownership of the service. Compared to bus fares, the streetcar fares are generally lower. And this is in part to reflect the different trip-making patterns. So many of these trips can be completed by walking. Other products that peers often offer are day, multi-day, and monthly passes, as well as either a single ride or a kind of a short period pass, like a 2-hour or 3-hour pass. The recommendation is, based on our review, we recommend accepting your 1-day, 7-day, and 30-day passes that are available on bus. Many of the riders that we spoke to last spring were very interested in streetcar, but they weren't willing to necessarily pay a second time to ride streetcar. So these passes are currently accepted on all bus services. In the future, kind of streetcar will be seen as an extension of your fixed route services. In addition to kind of accepting your bus passes, the proposal is to charge a $1 single trip fare that would be valid for 1 hour, which would enable your riders to complete a one-way trip. When we conducted focus groups at the end of October, participants were interested in an affordable fare, and they were also interested in paying for each trip rather than paying for a 2-hour pass where they may or may not be able to complete their round trip within that time period. The next component is a kind of streetcar-only day pass. This would be targeted mostly towards special events, as well as kind of people that are driving and parking downtown. These would be issued from the ticket vending machines. They would also be issued on mobile ticketing, and the plan is to have mobile ticketing live well in advance of streetcar. The other component would be a calendar pass or calendar monthly pass, which would be available on mobile ticketing. As part of updating your streetcar fare, the recommendation, or establishing a streetcar fare, the recommendation is to update your downtown discovery fare to kind of be in line with the single ride fare for streetcar. So the recommendation is to increase the price of the single trip fare that's currently 50 cents and increase it to $1 to match streetcar pricing in the future, and then also try to migrate your riders from your downtown discovery day pass to the kind of unlimited universal pass that will be valid both on bus and streetcar. The next component is really based off of our peer review and kind of looking at how you guys were priced compared to your peers. Embark single ride fares were generally in line with your peers, but pass prices were slightly underpriced, and this is in part due to the pass multiples that are used. So pass multiples provide a relationship between the single ride fare and the pass prices. So if you take the pass price and you divide it by the single ride fare, that gives you kind of your pass multiple. So one of the things that has impacted your pass multiples has been the fare increase that occurred in 2014 when you increased your single ride fare but kept your pass prices at the same level. And so as a result, you'll see kind of the one-day pass multiple went from 2.7 down to 2.3, which kind of brings it towards the lower end of your peers. And so shown here is kind of what the pass multiples will be for the proposed pricing that are shown on the next slide. In some cases, they're on the lower end. Some cases, they're on the higher end. This kind of variation is in part due to kind of trying to price your passes at a reasonable amount, such as at $1 or 50-cent increments, to really kind of try to minimize the amount of change that's being put into the fare box for the different passes. The recommendation is to increase your pass prices over the next 5 years. The recommendation is about a 12 to 25% increase on the day passes, and again, the variation is due to kind of the rounding to the nearest dollar of the adult fares. Increasing the pass prices will help Embark meet its 5-year fare box recovery targets adopted as part of that fare change policy. The proposed fare changes kind of using kind of an elasticity-based model that kind of understands price sensitivities of riders results in about a 10% increase in revenue and a 5% increase or decrease in ridership due to them responding to the increase in price. The next recommendation is related to the senior age threshold. FTA requires grantees to provide a half fare for seniors, and seniors are defined by FTA as 65 or older. However, FTA allows agencies to offer, extend the discount to younger persons. Many of Embark's peers have set their age threshold at 65. Only 3 of the 11 have a lower age threshold. One of the things that increasing your age threshold from 60 to 65 would help in doing is providing kind of a greater financial sustainability for Embark as the population ages and people kind of stay in the workforce longer. The final recommendation that we'll be talking about in this presentation, and we can talk about any of the other recommendations, is the fare schedule. So this is something that would be likely coming when the board is asked to adopt any of the fare changes for 2019. This kind of really provides a central location that documents all of your fare policies, your pricing, your structure, what fare payment methods you have, how riders are actually paying their fares. So it's really a document both for staff. I've also seen these published and available for riders so that they can kind of understand what the policies are for payment of fares. So that's a kind of a quick overview of the recommendations listed on the left. We've kind of included in your board packet the fare change policy draft, as well as a fare schedule draft, and a fare collection strategy draft that kind of all cover a lot of these topics that are covered up here. So thank you for receiving the recommendations, and I guess if there's any feedback or input that the board wants to provide now, I'll open it to you.
You might, at our committee meeting yesterday, gave a brief implementation of the time schedule or the time frame for all of this. You might just briefly.
Yeah, so the plan is to take the fare change policy, publish it online, print copies of it, have them at the transit center so that people can kind of look at the policy, provide input on it, either electronically or through comment cards. So the plan is to kind of have that out for 30 days so that then when it comes to your February board meeting, staff will be asking you to adopt the fare change policy. At that meeting, I believe the plan is also to kind of get a list of recommendations that you guys want to move forward with for 2019. So, for example, the streetcar fare would be one of those components, so that the public outreach can then occur in February with a formal public hearing in front of the board at the March meeting, and then adoption by the board at the April meeting, I believe. Did I catch everything, Jason? Or okay.
And one other question. We spent quite a bit of time yesterday on the technology, and and I didn't ever recall hearing, is the technology there to implement all your recommendations on buying passes and fares, or are we still kind of waiting on technology to catch up?
So there are components where, for example, there are things that are being explored and considered as part of the mobile ticketing procurement. So it will be kind of a back and forth conversation with the mobile ticketing vendor. The expectation is that technology, if it's not there immediately, for example, for parking / streetcar type fare products, it will be soon. That's kind of also the expectation with fare capping. There's definitely been interest by the mobile ticketing vendors to roll something like that out. But all of the recommendations that are on the left are all implementable right now.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just to make a comment, and I know we'll get to this on our items for individual consideration, item 6B in particular. I think for anybody hearing this information for the first time, it's just important to note the purpose of this meeting today is to simply receive these recommendations. So if anyone happened to glance at the slide indicating fare price or pass price increases or changes to the senior age, there's nothing that the board is being asked to take action on today. We're just simply receiving those recommendations, and it'll be a policy decision and discretion of the trustees which of those recommendations and when they're implemented. So again, I just felt like we needed to make that clarification. And then two, with regards to the fare policy that will be made available for public comment, the fare policy itself does not establish the price of fares. It's just our process that we will use moving forward in evaluating and determining what our fares should be. So again, for anyone that's just hearing this information for the first time, and they go out to look at that fare policy and think, well, where's the fare prices? Well, the fare policy will not have the fare schedule included in it. So again, just trying to make a point of clarification there that policy is really more about staff's obligation to provide information to trustees so the trustees can set goals and establish an appropriate fare.
Any other questions, Laura?
No, I'd just like to comment also that I think that I was confused as to why we needed a fare policy, but after we reviewed it and saw the comprehensive nature of it, it is really something that will not only guide the trustees and the staff in developing fare policies, but be able to do it on a comprehensive and the review of the peers. And we received a lot of information yesterday, and it was very helpful to us, I think, in seeing the scope of what this entailed.
And we also ask at the meeting with the fair policy that all the trustees have their copy, and, when it comes time to approve it, but in the meantime, would ask all the trustees to really go over it and put down any questions they have so that we are in a position to approve it when the time comes. So, all right, thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Do we have any citizens to be heard? If not, I would have a motion to approve the minutes of our November 3rd board meeting.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. And I will go ahead and ask for, because of this presentation, and everybody here was at the committee meeting yesterday, other than Steve, sorry, Steve. Yeah, I had to call you out. Is approval of the minutes of that joint Transportation and Finance Committee meeting. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We have 5 items on our consent docket. Any particular item any of the trustees would like a discussion on? If not, I'd have a motion to approve our consent docket.
So moved.
All in favor? Oh, that's where I come in. Opposed? Thank you. Items for individual consideration. Item A is extending time to award a contract to Homeco Construction for Union Station improvements. You might just briefly, I guess we'll get through this someday, but process.
I'll be brief. So yes, item 6A. This is the award of contract to Homeco Construction for improvements to Union Station. You can see in your memo there a general description of some of the improvements that the contractor will make. One of the main things we're hoping to accomplish with this project is to repair some of the roof drains. We currently have some water intrusion issues in Union Station due to leaking roof drains. Once those are fixed, we'll be able to do some stone repair. We'll be able to repair some of the interior walls that have been affected by water intrusion. We're also going to do some repairs to the foundation and footings of the facility. And so the work on this is expected to go through May of 2018. And if you'll notice, we actually approved the final plans and specs back in August. We ended up receiving 4 bids with, again, Homeco Construction determined to be the lowest bid. And then with award of this contract, we'll also assign Burgess Engineering and Testing as the testing vendor, and then also executing the contract and bonds. The funding on this is basically federal grants. It's 80% funded by federal grants.
All right. Is anybody occupying any part of the building now?
Yes, we still have staff in that building. Yes, and we've actually received an inquiry here recently of an entity looking for some temporary space. So as Spokies and the River Cruises operation relocate to Santa Fe, we may be able to fill some of that space temporarily.
All right, any questions? If not, I'd have a motion to approve item A. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item B is a resolution to receive the report we just heard and the report we heard at the Transportation and Finance Committee meeting yesterday. I assume there's no questions, so I would have a motion to approve item B.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. One more item, and that's to adopt a resolution to change the established boundary of ADA Paratransit Zone 2 and the addition of ADA Paratransit Zone 3 and Zone 3 fares. We've had discussions on this in the past, but if Jason briefly remind everybody.
Yes, as Ms. Wolfgram mentioned during her presentation, one of the recommendations from our fare study consultant we are already implementing, and it's looking at additional zone for our paratransit. Currently, we have 2 zones. This will expand not expand, but it will create a new zone within the existing service limits, Zone 3. So the The Zone 3 also has a additional or a different fare. So Zone 3 fares will be $10.50 per trip. On November 3rd, we had our public hearing for this fare change. That public hearing, as you'll note in your memo, was preceded by a couple of outreach meetings on both the 17th and 19th of October. And then the other thing I think that's important to note is as we put together this final recommendation that the trust is asking to approve today, these recommendations were based on feedback we received from conducting focus groups with both paratransit customers and stakeholders. So with that, once the trust or the Board of Trustees approves the Zone 3 and the Zone 3 fare, the fare will go into in effect in February.
All right, any questions? Then I'd have a motion to approve item C. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next item is ratification of claims and payroll. If any of the trustees have any questions, we could answer, and if not, I would have a motion to ratify.
Move to ratify claims and payroll. Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Two items from financial reports, and that's to, Jason's going to give us a brief overview of the schedule revenues and budget to actual for the 4 months, and then we'll have a little presentation on the annual financial report.
Yep. So just a few comments on our regular budget to actual report that we look at on a monthly basis. Again, if you'll turn to page 2 in your budget to actual for the 4 months ending October 31st, 2017, we'll begin by looking at our transportation operations, starting with the top half of the report, looking at our operating revenues. You'll notice that overall our operating revenues are essentially right in line with what we had budgeted at 100.9% of what we had expected through October. I will direct your attention to the fare box and the fare media sales revenue. They are under budget. Combined, we're about $63,000 less in revenue collections from those two revenue sources than what we had projected. However, if you look down at some of the other revenue lines, you'll notice that shortfall is offset by other passenger revenue and grant revenue from the area-wide aging agency coming in higher than target. And then also direct your attention to federal grant revenue, which you'll notice we're right on target for what we had anticipated through 4 months of the fiscal year. So total revenues are in line with what we had anticipated. I'm looking at our operating expenditures. You'll notice each one of those expenditure categories are under budget. Personal services is about 93% of what we had expected. And then you can see the streetcar operations, other services and fees, supplies and fuel, all also under budget. That leaves us with an operating income of just over $797,000 through 4 months of the fiscal year. And so again, we do expect that number to decline as we get through the year. But right now we're really pretty positive shape with our transportation operations. I'm looking at parking operations. Similar situation in that our overall revenues are on target, actually exceeding target by about 8.6%. Monthly contract revenue, the transient revenue, event revenue, interest, all is above what we had projected through 4 months of the fiscal year. Looking at our operating expenditures, we do continue to be under budget on our operating expenditures, but again, I would direct your attention to the parking garage operations line where it shows that we're under budget by about $239,000. Again, that's due to timing of not paying the Republic invoices, paying for the services that Republic provides for managing our garages in sync with how we had developed the budget. I will report out that as of 2014, all of the Republic invoices through September had been paid October's was processed on 12/14. So when we look at our parking financial in February, which will reflect December's numbers, you should see that budget to actual be more in line with what we had expected. Overall, operating revenues have exceeded operating expenses by about $1.8 million. Next page, page 4, is a look at our river cruises budget to actual. Again, starting with operating revenues, you'll see we're just about on target with what we had budgeted. We're at 102% of total operating revenues. We are, however, experiencing some shortfalls in our general fare and specialty cruise revenues. Keeping in mind, we did have some cancellations earlier in the year due to basically a lot of rain in the late summer and such that we don't normally anticipate, and it caused some closures of our system. But that is being offset by a payment from the Oklahoma Riverfront Redevelopment Authority of $25,000 that we had not anticipated receiving. So with that offset, we're right on budget with our revenues. Operating expenditures, if you look at the ferry contract operations, you'll notice we're about $61,000 over our budget. And the note there that I wanted to share with you is that we actually paid our November invoice at the end of October. So we have 5 months worth of expenses versus 4 months of budget. So it's, again, just a timing issue that we expect to correct itself on the next budget to actual. Overall, revenue exceeds expenses by $111,000 in our river operations. And then finally, finishing up with Spokies, would direct your attention to the bike share operating revenue line. Pleased to report that revenue generated by fees that users of the system pay is exceeding our projection. We're about $7,300 over what we had expected. On the expenditure side, we continue to perform under budget. Our operating income for the year, in other words, our revenues exceed our expenditures by just over $100,000. But again, I would just remind the trustees that the payment we received from the general fund to support the bike share operation, we've drawn that full amount for the fiscal year. So as we progress through the fiscal year and we spend down those funds, that operating income is going to shrink. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Well, Laura, I would say our staff is either very good budgeters or very good financial during the year. So if this holds up by the end of the fiscal year, I'd expect your department to give us a gold star and have a little party or something. Okay. Noted. All right.
Cupcakes for everybody.
Any questions? If not, then I'd have a motion to receive our financial reports. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Next item is receive our fiscal year 2017 annual report, and Becky Rhodes, who is the Assistant Controller for Oklahoma City, is going to give us a brief. And Craig promised me yesterday at the meeting that it would be a brief, but take all the time you need to tell us what you need.
Becky, you heard what a good job the chairman thinks that we're doing, so don't blow it, okay?
Okay. I promise to be brief. I know that you guys...
embarked, not the whole finance department. Just
Well, we're all doing great. I promise to be brief. I know that you guys really love talking about financial information as much as I do, so, I know you'll be disappointed, but I will go briefly through the financials. The first information to point out to you is that the authority financial statements were audited by AGH. AGH provided us with an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That's generally referred to as a clean opinion. Very good news. They did not identify any deficiencies in internal controls, any significant issues or concerns to communicate to the board. So we had a great experience with them. Everybody worked well together. No disagreements, arguments, any of those things. So it was a good audit. The financial statements themselves, there's 3 key areas that I recommend you focus your attention to. That would be the management discussion and analysis, the MD&A, which provides a set of condensed comparative financial statements, and analysis of the fluctuations between the years of changes. In addition, the financial, and that starts on page 7. The financial statements start on page 16, and they report more detailed information. Everything is presented on a full accrual basis of accounting, so it's not going to be comparative to the budget to actuals that you see throughout the year, which are more cash basis. And they provide detailed information about individual account line data. And finally, the notes to the financial statements, which begin on page 23, provide details about amounts reported in the financial statements. So that's a good place if you have a question about something or what makes up a number. The notes can sometimes help you get that information, and so you can answer the question they have. Okay, so net position for the authority overall increased $3.8 million to a total of $83.4 million. Transportation increased 1.5, parking increased 2.4, and River decreased 119,000. Transportation reported an operating loss of $24.8 million, which was offset by grant revenues and the city subsidy, and resulted in a net income of $1.5 million. They have an ending net position of 38.3. Of that, about $10 million is unrestricted. River reported $119,000 net loss, which reduced their ending net position by $3.8 million. And parking. Parking generated operating income of $2.8 million, which was offset by bond interest and some other non-operating income, and which came down to a net income of $2.4 million, and which increased ending net position to $41.3 million. Just to clarify, I think Craig did ask me to clarify to you, net position is relative to equity in a for-profit firm. That is the amount of money that's not committed. It's your assets less your liabilities, so it ends up being the amount that's left over. It's not cash. It could be assets of receivables, inventory, as well as cash.
Is it like retained earnings or?
Yes.
Okay.
Retained earnings or equity.
In the case of the parking system, is it also the value of the real estate that we own, the buildings, okay.
In both parking and transportation. And that was why when we talked about overall, the net position was $38 million, of which $10 million was unrestricted. The rest of that is capital assets and the related debt to those assets. Any other questions? Okay.
No questions then? All right. Well, thank you. I will have a motion to approve our 2017 annual financial report.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. All right, our program reports. First report is our streetcar report. Jesse? Been a lot of activity in the paper about our construction and everything. So
for sure. Good morning to the board. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. November was a busy month for operations and construction, so I'll jump right into it. So operations, we recently finalized our CEL list for our storage and maintenance facility, our Hudson Civil, and our Hudson Systems. So the certifiable elements list are basically safety checks. So for instance, the storage and maintenance facility, one of the certifiable elements there is making sure that the safety gates on the platform, on the mezzanines work like they're supposed to. We also check clearances for the streetcar coming into the building, make sure that they won't drag or touch anything. Hudson Civil certifiable elements, a couple examples there, are verifying that the ADA ramps meet all the cross slopes that they're supposed to. And then an example of the Hudson System certifiable element would be making sure that the breakers or the disconnects for the traction power substations that power the overhead cables work like they're supposed to. So mostly safety items. The next item there is Embark received the police and fire field safety reports. So part of our Fire and Life Safety Committee, we got several lieutenants, a couple of chiefs from the police department, and also from the fire department Herzog, Carlisle was out with us, and we walked the Bricktown area checking for any safety issues that they saw, and then also allowed us an opportunity to really get the police and fire involved into how the streetcar is going to operate on the system. It is a great working group. That's a picture of us out in the Bricktown area off of Joe Carter there. Great working group, and I think they're really starting to grasp how the streetcar is going to work with vehicles and traffic signals. So it's a huge help for everyone. Next item are our safety. We continue to review and develop our safety and security plans. We're hoping to get all of those wrapped up in March. We're preparing for our FTA readiness review in May or June of 2018. So our plan is to have all of our plans wrapped up in March, submitted to SSO, and be able to receive comments back prior to them showing up in Oklahoma City to do their readiness review. Our rail activation committee and our fire life safety and security committees continue to meet each month. We're ramping up for our week of meetings next week, actually. Some of the things that we've did at our rail activation committee recently, again, we approved our storage maintenance facility CLs, Hudson Civil and Hudson System CLs, but we also approved our rail activation plan, which is basically outlines all of everyone's responsibilities as far as integrating the system. And we also approved our system integration plan, which is our plan of procedures that we're going to do as far as integrating the streetcar system and getting it ready for startup, which basically, I've mentioned it before, but basically our plans are, making sure the streetcar has all of its clearances, verifying clearances prior to the streetcar arriving to the platform, those types of things. And then also some of we were also involved in our safety training that's pictured here. So Embark, Herzog, and Herzog, Stacy, and Whitback, we developed an OCS training, which, because we're going to be going hot wire on Hudson here very shortly, we wanted to make sure that we had that safety training in place. We held this in the back area of Union Station there. We had over 150 people show up for that. It's in this picture here. It's mostly construction staff. We also had our ODOT SSO there for the training, and then also the MAPS office, ADG, anyone that's currently working on the project. We also received and reviewed our ODOT program standards. That's basically ODOT's version of the safety standards that Embark will be following during revenue operations. And then we, Jason, myself, and Chip, we also in November went down to Fort Worth and visited with the FTA Region 6 Deputy Administrator. A great meeting with them. We were able to update them on all of the current projects and statuses of Embark projects and also the streetcar. Mainline track construction continues. Our milestones are holding. We're hoping to wrap up the Bricktown Loop in March of 2018, and then wrapping up the D-line or the downtown loop in August of 2018. Really the only thing that's left for the Bricktown Loop is standing up the OCS poles and installing the overhead wire, and then just final touch-ups within the right-of-way, such as installing sod, that type of stuff. This is a picture of them doing the thermite welding. This is probably the only time you'll ever hear construction guys bragging about how good the fire was on a construction site. But they use chemical reactions here and basically weld the 150-foot-long rail strings together. Just a quick overview of the status of the mainline construction. Again, so each month we're progressing like we're supposed to. Utilities clear, 78%. The utilities being clear is a huge milestone. Once we reach 100% there, we'll really start to see progress with the streetcar construction. As well as the utilities department does of mapping underground utilities, there's always something that's not prepared for, and so they're getting through that, and they're getting close to wrapping that up, and then we'll really start to see some progress. 57% complete with the track demo, 50% complete with the track installation. So anywhere you see green on the map, utilities and the track demo are complete. OCS foundations, 57% complete there. 27% complete with the station stops. So all of the station flat work is completed in the Bricktown area. 50% complete with our traction power substations. We've got the one off of Flaming Lips completed. The one in the parking lot near the, just south of, or just east of BNSF Railroad on Reno completed. And then the traction power substation down at the storage and maintenance facility is complete. And it's a little hard to see on the screen, but we're 10% complete with the overhead wire, and that's the wire run there on Hudson, south of the boulevard. Storage and maintenance facilities getting very close to wrapping up. So Wind Construction's working on their final punch list items and getting the owner furnished contractor installed items installed. We're working on finalizing our vendor training. We're hoping to get that worked out next week. The only thing that's really left on the vendor training is the CCTV cameras, and then the MACTIN equipment, which is basically turntables and jacks. And we've got a bogie lift, which is you set the trucks from the streetcar on those, and you're able to maneuver those around. In this picture here, you can see that the landscaping is installed. We've got our fences up. The concrete in the track yard is complete, and since this picture was taken, the asphalt in the track yard is also complete. So we're getting really close to wrap up, and we're hoping to be able to move in January. Vehicle procurement. So we're getting very close to receiving our first streetcar. We're expecting to receive that in January of 2018. Embark and MAP's office and the city PIO have been working very closely with Silk Road Transportation. They're the company that's going to bring these vehicles to Oklahoma City for us. Been working real close with them to develop the plan of actually delivering the streetcar. So the plan is to Silk Road will bring it in on Hudson, and then we'll roll the streetcar off of the trailer and take it into the storage and maintenance facility, get it prepped for a public viewing. So again, we're on track here. We're looking to receive the second streetcar in January, third and fourth streetcar in February, fifth car in March, and the sixth car in April. So the streetcar system is about to get very real once we have streetcars arrive. And then I'll go into more detail into the actual testing, that type of stuff in my January presentation, but starting in January, we'll start seeing streetcars maneuvering up and down Hudson, and then as the Bricktown Loop gets complete, we'll start seeing them maneuvering in the Bricktown area doing testing. I'll take any questions.
There's quite an article in the paper about, and you'll have to refresh me on the gal's name, that is kind of doing the troubleshooting on the route and talking to merchants and everything, and I thought it was very educational. But, I mean, are we doing as good a job as we can in respect to the merchants and along the route? You feel like?
I think we are. So one of the things that Herzog Stacy Whitbeck Group did to help merchants along the route was that they had planned on doing construction in the automobile alley area in November, December, and to help accommodate the lighting and the merchants along Broadway out or down Automobile Alley. They restructured their schedule and hopped around so that we could not disturb Automobile Alley. And then also the group they're going out and they're having lunches along the route and doing their best to communicate that they can. Yeah.
And it's open dialogue. If the merchants have questions, they can come to us and get the answers.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's a team of people that they can communicate with. As far as construction goes, Kristen Torkelson with ADG, she's kind of the main point of contact there. But she comes to all of the construction meetings. She's heavily involved in the construction process. She's involved in the training process and all MAPS coordination. And so she's the main point of contact, and I think she's doing a great job. Yeah.
All right.
She's very busy.
Any questions? All right. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
Long-range plan. You're getting grayer all the time. Look like Santa any day now.
Ho, 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 yeah, starting to look like Santa Claus with a white beard. Happy holidays, and just a little bit from the long-range planning report. As you know, about 11 new buses were delivered and have gone into operation. What an important thing for our long-range planning activities. And, Cotpa won a grant for an electric bus back in September, and, that's going to be an interesting piece of technology when it finally is ordered and arrives. And along those lines, there's a national lawsuit regarding Volkswagen. For Oklahoma, there's about $20 million worth of VW settlement money that will come. And in this past month or so, Cotpa has made some comments about how the state's allocation of that should be spent. Ideally, that would be a way to buy a second electric bus, but so hard to say. But that has some interesting implications. My main comments today, though, really are about the Northwest Multimodal Concept Plan and also a little bit about national election trends. Okay, so I'll start with a few words about what's happening. You know, this Northwest Multimodal Corridor was the winner of a National Transportation Planning Award. USDOT gives out about 10 every other year. And what's kind of interesting about the plan, and you might look at the next slide here, let's see, here we go, is that we're talking about a bus rapid transit, BRT, that would conceivably start downtown, go out Classen Boulevard, then out the Northwest Expressway to Meridian. I know you're pretty familiar with that. About 9 miles. The idea would be to have a service that would have about a 12 to 15-minute frequency and about a dozen pairs of stops along that 9 miles. That's a pretty high-density corridor for Oklahoma City, and there's a lot of opportunity for transit-oriented development and park and ride lots as well along the routes. So that planning has been progressing. And just a little bit more of a sense about bus rapid transit, I think these images kind of say a lot, okay? Basically, buses, BRT is often called buses acting like streetcar, and in Oklahoma City at least, buses and streetcar can share platforms, and ideally that would be part of the plan. There we go. You know, for a street that's outside of downtown, Classen and Northwest Expressway are sort of a main street in Oklahoma City. A lot of density of employment. These heat maps kind of show that density. And not only that, but if you were to take, as in this next slide, and add up the number of jobs as well as the number of people who reside in a given block, you really get that sense that, yes, this is a corridor that has some great potential. So how do we accelerate implementation of the plan? Well, back in October, the city of Oklahoma City applied for a Tiger grant, federal Tiger grant from the USDOT, and while the overall project's estimated to cost about $31 million, the actual amount that would be Tiger, the federal part, is only 56%. Okay, so the city of Oklahoma City is actually pledging a pretty high match rate for that. You know, of part of that also is the benefit cost analysis had to be done to try to show the promise of it, and that had a high ratio. It came in very, very well. And should Oklahoma City be awarded it, or any city, won't really know until late spring, okay, maybe May or June. Nationwide, it's a very competitive process. Only $500 million is available. They won't spend more than $50 million in any state, and we do know that the city of Tulsa has applied for the BRT corridor that they're planning along what used to be Route 66. So, you know, we'll all have to keep our fingers crossed. So what are the next steps? Well, like with any planning process, we've got to try to maintain the momentum of people who are aware of it and supportive of it. And we need to initiate the environmental planning, okay, the NEPA requirements, as they say. And so we hope to have a meeting with FTA in this next 3 weeks or so to initiate the process, at least discussions with them. And really, we'll rely upon them to give us a lot of guidance about how to proceed with the scope for consultants and the like. Some other steps are that we'll need to continue to coordinate with what was called resource agencies. You might think of those as being like the State Department of Transportation, the State Historic Preservation Office, and really a number of city departments, for example. And so, you know, obviously, we'll continue to try to promote the idea of transit-oriented development along the corridor and the like. So, you know, part of the Northwest Multimodal Concept Plan is that you have to have a way to get pedestrians and bicyclists across 6 or 8 lanes of traffic safely. It's great for them to have that, helps build the community, but for transit customers, it's absolutely essential to have a way to get folks back and forth across those 6 lanes. Out at Independence Avenue, the student sketches that were done back in 2015 talk about a 2-stage crossing where perhaps a pedestrian can cross 3 lanes of traffic and then be in a very, very secure and kind of fortified place to wait at the median so that they might go in the 2nd stage to get across the other 3 lanes. The other way would be some type of grade separated crossing, and those are quite expensive, but the Tiger Grant contemplates it in perhaps a couple of locations. Now, switching gears, okay? The past few years, we've presented what's been happening nationwide in terms of local transit elections, and this year, just the same. There were fewer initiatives across the country. Only 12 states had some vote about transit funding. There were 20 different measures. And basically, Oklahoma City was one of them. As you may recall, back on September 12th, among the different bond issue propositions was $20 million for transit here in Oklahoma City. And in our case, there was a 61% approval rating, which is great to see. Around the country, of those 20 elections, 3 of them were just to extend an existing transit operating and or capital tax. And some were just advisory, sort of have an election to see if you can have an election, or I think in the case of Adams County in Colorado, a vote about whether or not to establish a regional transit authority. And nationwide this year, the pass rate was about 90%. Again, not as many elections as has been the case, but generally these transit elections do tend to pass. You know, every region's different, but they all will go through some great preparation in order to get ready. And then this is a kind of a graph you've seen in the past. In the blue, you see that sales taxes are the most popular type of initiative that usually gets put out there around the country. Pretty high pass rate of about 86%. The red part of the pie is property tax initiatives to build and operate transit. Every one of those passed around the country, and so you can kind of look at the data and get a sense of what's going on. The bonds, ours was, I think, one of the 4 elections. All 4 of the local bond issues around the country passed for transit. So really, with that, that concludes my comments. Be glad to answer any questions.
Just a brief update on our regional transit authority and, kind of where the committee stands or what, kind of.
Well, they've been conducting some interviews of management staff and other elected officials around the region. Jason's really probably in a better position to answer how that's happened. They've hired that consultant. And Jason, you might want to.
Sure, I could add to that, Larry. So yes, the Regional Transit Authority Task Force has, working with ACOG, they've selected a consultant, Holmes and Associates, to assist the group, meaning the different communities that are involved and stakeholders, such as Cotpa, and just really trying to determine, what would this governance model look like, and how would we go about forming it, essentially kind of putting it together on paper. So that work is underway, and as Larry mentioned, part of the initial task the consultant accomplished was just doing interviews with the different municipalities, some elected officials, some management staff. And so we continue to, at this point, work alongside of that consultant and kind of follow the schedule that they've put together for us. So quite a bit of detail to probably get into right now, but we could certainly do that in the venue of a transportation committee meeting, perhaps bring a presentation to kind of go through not only what we've accomplished to this point, but kind of the framework the consultant has laid out for us over the next 12 months or so.
I think that's a big step for the consultant to be hired to kind of put it on paper, what this organization will look like.
Yeah, very, very big step. So,
relatedly, I was encouraged at the Santa Fe ribbon cutting ceremony to hear from Roy Williams at the Chamber that in some polling that's been done where the RTA, where that line would go, 2-to-1 support for the commuter rail. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that's exactly what he mentioned.
Will we be hearing more, and or when will we be hearing more about those results? Because if I remember correctly, they were wanting to talk about some of what we're looking at here. What might voters support in terms of, how to fund operations and construction? Is there a timeline on when we're going to hear more about that, results from the public?
I'd really need to just check with the chamber on that, as far as exact timing. But as we work through the process, those will be considerations that we're going to have to look at.
And then I know you're talking, Larry, about this Northwest Corridor and class, and I'm very excited about that. Over the summer, I did a little homework and saw in the Plan OKC that there's a BRT also suggested, planned in there, that would go Reno to connect to the airport and then go down Southwest 59th to, it seems, what would eventually be this RTA. When will we start talking about possible opportunities to have those conversations with the public, possible funding opportunities? I know that we had to reach out for a Tiger grant, for instance, for this one. Are we just sort of waiting to see what happens with this before we have that conversation about what's in that plan?
Okay, well, all the corridors that you mentioned, they were key parts of the 2005 Fixed Guideway Plan, which a lot of people call a Fixed Guideway Study. And yes, those talked about bus rapid transit that would go out Reno Avenue and find their way to the airport, some other connections as well. And, just like with the Northwest BRT project, there's no actual capital funding available to do the whole thing, okay? And of all those corridors, the Northwest Multimodal Corridor, Northwest BRT, seemed to be the one that had the most promise, and so that's kind of where the start is. We're not really ready to begin those conversations with the community out there. We probably really need to make sure that the support for Northwest BRT continues to grow, and that we get more people aware of what bus rapid transit is. A lot of people, it's not our parents' bus. This is really a quite different type of service, different type of vehicle, different type of platform, like those graphics show. So really, we talk about those corridors, and there may actually be other ones. 2005 was a long time ago. There might be others that really make some sense for Oklahoma City, but it's a little premature to really start engaging the public about those corridors.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you, Larry. One more program report, and that's marketing, customer relations, and technology. Michael?
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to share a few things that have been going on since I last spoke to you in September. Just as a reminder, we had our 10th annual health fair, and again, we had a successful day where we hosted many of our own clients or customers, but we also had some downtown residents who came over and took advantage of some health services that were brought to their neighborhood. We had nearly 100 vaccinations that were flu vaccinations that were administered during that time, and that was with the assistance of the Oklahoma City County Health Department and their partnership, as well as the Oklahoma City Indian Clinic and the Neighborhood Services Organization. They provided dental screenings, and we had nearly as many screenings take place as there were those vaccinations. This continues to be, I think, an important program for our customers. We want a healthy rider and customer base. That also hopefully helps our employees stay healthy as well, so those operators aren't contracting the flu or other things like that as well. A quick update also would be on our research projects. Last time I came, spoke to you, they were different levels of completion. All the data has been collected. As you can see here, we've got 4 different studies that have taken place, and we currently have ETC to come back and present to you in March a summary of those findings, and we'll make available to you the full reports as well. There's always a lot of good information that we use to plan our business plan and strategy around, as well as our communication efforts. All right. So the Hall Pass program, wanted to give you a quick update there as well. We currently have 247 students enrolled. When we spoke to you about this in September, there was only 93. We now have 11 high schools participating and actively involved, whereas we only had 6 in September. So as the program continues to mature, it will grow in its use as well as its awareness to the administrators at each of the schools who are helping us make sure students are aware of the program. One of the things that we are challenged with is making sure administrators always know about the program. One thing we've found is that administrators and teachers who may have been the project lead, they may move to a different school or move out of the district, So that turnover rate requires us to constantly re-educate that group about the program, its availability, how it works, and how to help administer that program for the students. So in here, you'll see through November, we've had about a total of 682 trips taken, and this is just for the junior and senior program. This is not including the $10 pass that other students can purchase for unlimited rides. So one of the areas that we have been working with the parking division on is trying to help reduce the perception and reality that there is not affordable parking in downtown. One of the things we've heard back from customers, or when it's regarding Thunder games or events, is that, oh, it costs so much to go downtown and park. We have a very affordable rate, and what we want to do is help highlight that and change that perception. So after doing some research with our market that does market studies as well as media buying, looking at ways to hopefully impact that positively, is we're using Park Cheap OKC as a moniker for really, I just lost the word, I'm sorry, for opportunity to really emphasize, thank you, there is that $10 is affordable compared to the $20, $30, and sometimes even higher that you might see surrounding the Thunder games or major community events. And what is difficult, too, when we've talked to various city staff persons is that sometimes some of those surface lots, they get set up illegally. So it's very difficult to see those right away and for the city to respond to that. And it's just a challenge. And so we want to help just, again, by pushing people to the Santa Fe is where we're going to focus first on for these major events, and then continue to develop that and grow that to our other garages as appropriate. So what you'll see or start hearing next week is anytime there's a game day, there will be a very short 15-second spot on the sports animal. That was a primary audience that was identified. And then you'll also see a pretty heavy social media presence regarding the same message. And again, this will be an opportunity just to, again, get that message out about $10, $10, $10. Since we were last here, we have released a few more renderings. This will finish up what renderings we have made available to the public regarding the streetcar. This is here in Automobile Alley. This one is in Midtown. And the final here was also the Central Business District to show that interaction in the downtown core. So a few other projects that are taking place that we're working on, and you'll start seeing more information about over the next few months, is there is an OKC streetcar safety messaging campaign that is being developed to help pedestrians and cyclists understand how to interact with the tracks and then later on the streetcar vehicle. And we'll continue those with motorists and also how to use the system, and those will all be in animation form as well as website and social media messaging. We also have a Join Our Team, a hiring campaign aimed at operators and mechanics as we continue to want to build our team and have the most qualified individuals in those positions. And then a pretty significant one that is going to impact all of our service lines is a web needs assessment. So for our website, we have a lot of integrations, and that technology is constantly changing, which requires that we make changes and respond as needed if they're going to maintain any connectivity to our websites. We have 5 websites that we'll be managing over this next year. So what we're looking to do is to identify what those system integrations are, how do we best accommodate those. And then we want to maintain a multimodal focus, so that way, if you're on any one of those sites, that you can still find a way to get to your destination using our modes that are available. And then, of course, we'd love to identify as many efficiencies as possible, both for staff and cost savings as well. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
I just noticed that in this notice of public hearing, that you've done it in 4 different languages. Did that come from?
Yes, so we use a firm to help with that. We don't have that talent on staff. It'd be a great resource, but we do have a firm that also the Oklahoma City Utilities Department uses that's is very well versed in the region and the dialects used in our region. And so we are required, according to our LEP plan, to provide those in at least those languages.
That's great. Is it used in other instances or just in this?
So anytime we produce public documents, we always have at least a Spanish translation available. So Vietnamese and Chinese is also part of our LEP requirement. We make those available as requested, just because of the proliferation of all of our documents. That would be very difficult and costly to take on all at once. But we do provide all of our public meeting documents always in those languages and have those ready.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Thank you. Michael? All right, any items from the trustees? Any questions? Oh, thank you, Vice Chairman. We need a motion to receive the reports. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Now, any comments till we get to Jason so he can have a...
I'll just wish everybody happy holidays and Merry Christmas.
Thank
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just a couple of comments. Wanted to, again, just recognize the opening of the Santa Fe Depot. We had, as Trustee Cooper mentioned, the ribbon cutting on December 7th, and then that following Saturday, September the 9th, when we had the open house for the public, was well attended. I think the public information marketing staff from the city that organized that event did a great job, and I think the turnout surpassed their expectations. So I share that just to say there was a lot of interest in that Santa Fe Depot and the revitalization of that building, and I think that's good for us as obviously a transit agency and the community's interest in transit and what's been going on. So I wanted to mention that, and then also again, just kind of following some of the comments that I had earlier about the fare policy and fare schedule that was just introduced today. I failed to mention that as part of the consideration that the trustees will have in anything that's recommended, we as staff will also manage that public process that we do every time. So again, what was introduced today, there'll be additional opportunity for public input. Thank you.
All right. Then I would also wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you next year. We're adjourned.